Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV, where today I'm Andrew Sumner and I'm presenting the San Diego Comic-Con at home panel for Titan Comics' Extraordinary comic, written by the amazing V.E. Schwab and illustrated by the spectacular Enid Balám. So this is the panel that we recorded for San Diego Comic-Con at home 2021 a couple of weeks ago. Thank you to Justin Dutta and the San Diego team for letting us share it with you here. Enjoy. Welcome to San Diego Comic-Con 2021 and welcome to the Titan Comics V.E. Schwab's Extraordinary panel. And my name's Andrew Sumner from Titan Entertainment, and I'm here with the spectacular creative team of V.E. Schwab's Extraordinary. That's V.E. Victoria Schwab herself. Hello, Victoria.
Hi.
And the magnificent artist is Enid Balám. How are you, mate?
Thank you. Welcome to all the people who is hearing this and watching. We are very happy to share some time with you.
Yeah. And thanks for dropping in, everybody. Extraordinary is a book that we're very privileged to publish at Titan Comics. The first issue went on sale in June. The second issue goes on sale in the month that you'll be watching this, July. And we have a collected edition of the first volume coming out in October. So Victoria, what can you tell us about Extraordinary, the comic book, and its relationship to one of your existing novel series?
Yeah, so Extraordinary is set in the world of Vicious and Vengeful, which is my supervillain book series. Essentially, it's a world where near-death experiences sometimes manifest superpowers. And extraordinaries are EOs, that's the term for people with those powers. Now, the books follow Victor and Eli, a pair of precocious young pre-med students who make this discovery and go from being, friends and rivals to bitter enemies over the course of the books. So I wanted to set a comic in between the two books. And there's something that happens at the very end of Vicious that really informs the villain for the comics, I would say, but I wanted to follow somebody new. And so in addition to Victor and Eli's story being deeply important to Extraordinary, the comic, we meet Charlie Till, Charlotte, who has just almost died in a bus accident. And she has survived and she has gained the ability to see people's deaths in reflective surfaces, which is traumatic, of course. But what's more traumatic is that when she looks at her own reflection, she sees Eli. And Eli in the books is a serial killer who specializes in killing extraordinaries. And so she essentially sees her murderer in her own reflection, and she sets out to change her future and maybe find Eli before he could find her.
It's such a wonderful concept, Victoria. What was your inspiration for the premise of the book, and also for these amazing powers that you've conceived of for the characters?
I mean, it all started because I'm really fascinated by the semantics of hero and villain, like who gets labeled what. And originally I just wanted to think, okay, well, what if it didn't have anything to do with your moral landscape? What if it was simply that the person that you were antagonistically opposed to got labeled hero? So all of a sudden you're the villain in the narrative by virtue of the fact that you're against what society or what somebody has labeled the hero. And that's what happens with Victor and Eli. Eli is a murderer. He is a serial killer who hunts down EOs, but because of how his life has worked, he is seen as a hero. He has been branded a hero. And so when Victor sets out to track him down and kill him, Victor automatically becomes the villain. And I really also wanted to explore this idea that superpowers do not make somebody a superhero. They just make somebody a human, complex, has as many weaknesses as they do strengths, who now has the ability to act on all of their whims, all of their petty grievances, because I was like, it's fun to talk about villains that are interested in like world domination, but the truth of it is that like if most of us had superpowers, we would go after that person who made us feel small, that bad breakup, that bad boss, that whatever it is. And so I was really interested in this idea that powers in general make us worse, not better.
I think that is so interesting, and
Yeah.
and I think one of the interesting things about the movie Superman 2, to take everybody right back for a second, is that the key emotional beat in Superman 2 is not when Superman takes down the villains from Krypton. It's when he goes back to the diner and faces the guy who beats him up in the diner midway through the film when he hasn't got any powers. And I remember seeing that when I was a kid, and the whole audience, when he just opens the door of the diner, but he's Clark Kent to Superman, and we know that, but nobody else does. The whole cinema erupted. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, because what people are getting off on is the identification of triumphing over, a small time grievance, not a bigger thing. And I think that's one of the interesting things about that book, is that you're exploring this very interesting concept of the essential humanity that would limit any kind of superpower or ability.
I was gonna say, it's just relatable. Like, I don't think most of us can relate to the desire for world domination, but we can deeply relate to the feeling of being wronged and wishing that we could do something about it.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true. I mean, it's a wonderful trope in comic books, right from the very early days, right from the Lee and Kirby era of, you get some magnificent kind of power. You're not a terribly nice person. And you decide as your next step that you're going to take over the world. Who in reality, do you know who's ever made that decision? Not even people who are given tremendous power. Well, maybe with the exception of Donald Trump, who knows, although he wasn't very good at it. So his incompetence, was the undoing of him. Enid, how familiar were you with Victoria's work before you started working on Extraordinary?
As we talked last time, I was not, unfortunately, but I have come to discover this amazing series, and just a glimpse to the giant, enormous imagination of Victoria. There are a few concepts which I am familiar with and I'm interested, which, for example, death has become a common theme, a common thing to be involved through this past year, and it is a common concern which has make all of us faced and have to discover new things, even from us, from our families. We have had tons of thoughts and time to think, and I think this comic book, as always, comes on a very precise time for me, and I think for most of readers. I mean, it is a supervillain theme comic book, but the concept of death, the concept of sight, and the concept of reflection, those three elements, I think they are very relevant, they are very unique, and something that we all have been thinking and relating in different ways just in the recent times.
That's very interesting, mate. Those themes, that's such a lovely way to put it, a death sight reflection. What was it, Victoria, that spoke to you about those when you were formulating the story?
I mean, I look back at all of my 20 novels, and the one thing that they have in common is death. But specifically, I think the idea of the porousness of life and death, this idea that it's not a one-way road, but it's something that we're constantly towing the line of, right? I think it's of course a universal fear that we have because it's so one-directional. But it's also, we have, because of that, a fascination with people who skirt death, whether it's people who, climb mountains or jump off of them, or just that kind of have that need to play along the line of death, or whether it's those of us who have had experiences with death or lost people. We want to believe that there's a porousness. We want to believe that you can come back. And so most of my stories are actually an exploration of what happens when we touch death and come back.
Yeah, okay, that's very, very interesting to me. I think, does that speak to you, Enid?
Very much as well. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was very afraid because both my parents got sick. So I was doing the beginning of the comic book, and then I was having to solve a lot of things in real world now. And then I was going back to this fictional job. So it does, I mean, in different levels. But the most thing I take of this series, here in my country, there's a lot of relation with mythology and the local pantheon of gods. And there is one that it's a seasonal god, as in many countries. And I'm gonna be very short on this story. This one is called Shipetotic, and it's a seasonal god about death, life, and rebirth. And the concept of the god, it is very similar to what I proposed in the first number 0 cover for the series. So I was always thinking about this, but trying to make the best of it. I mean, it is a very intense story because the characters are having like this gruesome moments, facing their fears. So I was also facing my own fears. I'm always making a mirror with reality and comic books because it is a job. I mean, all of us have it, no? When you're in front of the computer and you're doing your thing, is a very private, a very inner self moment. But then reality is always not at the door. So you have to be at both sides of the coin, dealing with reality and dealing with the job, and they speak to each other. So it is very rare. It is a mystery to me how this book came to my life in a moment where I was thinking about that and have to develop a graphic universe leading by Victoria's imagination.
You know, I love listening to you speak, mate, because you've always got such a tremendous connection with the natural world when you talk about things, and the manner in which you express yourself. You're always just very naturally fully thought out about those issues. And I think this is one of the reasons why you guys are so well matched on this book. Yeah, and I can see that even without any rehearsal time, something we talked about just before we started recording is the fact that I know that Enid has a great love of horticulture, and you're now both in similarly plant-heavy environments as you're recording this. Yeah, it's just
well, so, I think that's a really fun thing is like, and this has been such a cool partnership in many obvious ways, but also in many subtler ones too, just like that. I think Eden and I have kind of different approaches to story. You know, you're always looking to ground it in a mirror of reality, Enid, and I'm looking to kind of escape that and look for the fantastical about it. And so I think it creates a really nice push and pull in our work of like, Enid keeps it from getting too far away. It feels grounded. It feels very, very real. And I love that because I think in comic books, of course, but really in like a comic book about superpowers and villains, like it could get to feel less grounded. And I really love that it doesn't.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a really lovely balance there. In terms of the series so far, Enid, what have you enjoyed illustrating the most so far?
Well, the powers, the super abilities have been very fun to draw. They have been presented in very different ways, and they have certainly presented a lot of challenges, visual challenges, how to develop this. I mean, just to think on Charlotte's ability to see through reflections. It's a whole new level. I was thinking when I was told I was to do the cover for number 0, I have a lot of ideas, and I presented like 8 sketches or 10 sketches, and I was like, I have to do this Narcissus version. Then I will go to the god of death, I don't know, I was thinking a lot of mythologies. So I was blown away. There's a lot of possibilities, you know. They're like simple, but they have a lot of ramifications, a lot of branching to go. Visually, it's very, it has a lot of richness to me. So it makes me think a lot of things in a lot of ways where I could draw this story forever. I mean, I know it has an ending, and like everything, but it is something that has captivated me. And as I mentioned on our last chat, even the script has a very well balanced, because I always encounter the same words, I mean, from A to Z, but each writer has their very beautiful way to express themselves, and they have different tones, they have different kind of songs, if you want to see it like that. And Victoria's, it is, I'm always hearing like a classical music theme on my head when I see how she develops very different rhythms. They get different intensities through the 22 pages. So it starts in a manner, and then it evolves, and then has this tension, and it always resolves, and then again the tension. So I'm always like thrilled to draw, because I'm also feeling the rhythm, you know, and that is very beautiful, very, very well. I'm fascinated, but by musicians, by writers. They always nail it. They always have this amazing way to tell a story with different rhythms, and I enjoy it a lot.
I think
that makes me so happy to hear, because coming from books, I think one of my greatest fears in writing comics was that I wouldn't be able to capture that rhythm or that energy the same way that I knew that I could in a novel. So that makes me very, very happy.
And Victoria, what was the road for you in terms of having been so established as a novelist, but becoming a comic book writer? What was that process like for you?
I mean, it's a gift, right? Writing novels is wonderful, and it takes a village to publish them, but the actual writing's quite lonely, quite solitary. And you really do feel like comics and scripts, they feel like a living document. Like I'm writing something to be interpreted by my artist. But with novels, like every word that you choose is going to be the word that readers read. And so you really are alone in painting those pictures for them. And so my goal as a novelist is always to write a film that's going to play in their head the same way it's playing in my head. And it's a very persnickety process, getting to have an artist to collaborate with and have somebody truly like drawing those images out and codifying them. And you know, the positive is that you have an articulated vision that people can look at. The negative is that you have one articulated vision that people can look at, right? That's the only downside, is that it can't live in a different manifestation in the reader's head then. But the gift of it, to be able to say, like, look at this, like, look at this world come to color and come to life. I always say every day it's like sitting down and getting to see like professional fan art from my inside of my head, like, because it's just so deeply cool. And I think the thing that I didn't realize was going to happen, and Enid does it so well, is it's not like I bring 50% and Enid brings 50%. I bring like the launch pad, and then every time I get to look at these pages, Enid has gone so far above and beyond what I could have even imagined. And so I think for me, the exciting part is that room for interpretation, is getting to say to Enid, like, here is what needs to be in this scene or in this panel or in this page, but I want you to choose how those panels are structured. I want you to choose which panels are taking up space, which like actions are feeling big, because I feel like the more space I can give Enid to stretch and to do his magic, the better it's going to look. And like every time I get to see an issue and see the line art, I just am blown away, because it's just so much bigger and better than it ever would have been in my head if I had tried to be rigid and articulate exactly how I wanted it seen.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The thing that fascinates me as somebody who's edited a bunch of comics is that comics creativity, particularly, I think, is a kind of trust and faith-based exercise. And how far into the process were you with Enid when you thought, right, okay, you know, that we're definitely hitting the right level of faith and trust and belief?
Probably issue 0. I mean, because that was the beautiful thing. Issue 0 is a half issue, and like I was probably a little bit more articulate in exactly what I wanted to see and how, but I tried to put in like a couple pages that I knew could be interpreted, that I knew Enid could flex with, and as a kind of test. I mean, I did the same thing on my last comic, just to kind of see, okay, if I give you this much space, like, am I going to need to articulate exactly what I want? And not because of like a qualitative way, but in a, like, how far are you departing from my vision? If I give you space, like, is it still going to feel like the thing that I am trying to tell? And as soon as I gave Enid space and I saw what he came back with, I was like, oh, we're good. And I knew this obviously from like audition. I knew this from looking at Enid's pages on other work. I knew the pieces of Enid's work that excited me most, the dynamism, the movement, the like energy of the bodies. And so I was really, really excited to see how he did that. And like I say, the moment I gave that space just to kind of test and see, like, do we have an aligned vision? I was like, oh, this is a perfect partnership. Like I every single issue, I just get more and more excited to see what Enid does.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've had a little conversation, the three of us, about this before, but it's a tremendous source of excitement when your pages come into the office, Enid. To be honest, it's a tremendous source of excitement when your script comes in, Victoria. So the great, the piece of perhaps not easily achievable advice I would have for anybody watching this panel who wants to work within the comic book industry is, step one is work with the best people. And if that's all you need to do. It's like when Robert Vaughn in Superman 3 says, I asked you to kill Superman, you couldn't even do that one simple thing. I know saying it is very easy, but the reality is it's such a pleasure seeing this book come together. And I think in terms of kind of not just fan service, but fan enrichment, the fact that it exists within this tapestry of your novel work, I think is a beautiful thing. And getting to it and enhance things like that, I think it's great for you, I'm sure, but I think it's great for your fans.
Oh, it's a gift. It's a total, it's been amazing.
So Enid, how does working on ExtraOrdinary differ from the books you've illustrated in the past?
Well, in other books, I have been with other writers who are very interested, and I think they want to control a lot. They want to make something very precise and very like how they are picturing in their head but sometimes it doesn't work very well, because if you think, for example, two actions happening in the same panel, they can be done, but if you choose to do it more and more and more, it becomes some sort of a noise. The page, as well as I was describing the parallel with music, it has a sense, and they also have a history. They have some fashions to do it. Like, for example, in the 70s, the construction of the page had some sort of way to do it, and then it changed in the 90s. Then it has been evolving, and now as a zeitgeist of the comic books, they are curiously going back to classic comics. Instead of doing something radically different, the construction of the page is going back. There is something to think of the past. So when I worked in other books, they were telling me some sort of construction, telling me where the panels were going to be. And that as a way of working, it is very interesting because it's challenging, but also tends to slow me down, because I always have to go back and tend to adjust and modify the panels in order to work on that vision. And it is interesting to work on that sense. But I think what I'm doing now is using my insect antenna and try to be very perceptive to the subtext. On the script, there are a lot of directions with Victoria, but also there is a subtext, and there is something that I can grasp of her and her way of describing things. And I think there is also a feeling and an intention. You know, texts have that richness where it's not what it's describing, but it also has poetry, and it also has some sort of an imprint of what the person desires. So what I think I'm going for here is different from other books is to be perceptive, to be very open, and to receive the text and try to read and read and read, and try to get those small elements that perhaps the reader will enjoy and connect to.
I also just want to give a shout out to our editor, David Leach, because I feel like without his guidance, like I definitely, coming from novels, I was like, what do you mean you can't just keep having two actions in the same panel? He's like, you got to choose, Like he taught me early on about balancing to make sure that I could give Enid that space to make sure that it wasn't becoming, as you said, Enid, like noise by having too much action and that variability that we have in the comic between big moments and small moments and loud moments and quiet moments. So I think another thing on that bucket list, Andrew, of like things you can't control that you really should have is an amazing editor who can help you understand how to make work from the writer side in the best translation for the artist, and create that space so that things can happen between the author and the artist.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. As you know, I've known our senior creative editor, David Leitch, for a very long time, about over 30 years. And the thing about David that's interesting is when he and I were young and we were comic book fans, I was a journalist at the time, a TV presenter, and he was a cartoonist. And we became friends by accident at a party. One of the first conversations we ever had was about how comics do and don't work. And so that has been a fundamental part of the David Manley Leitch psyche his entire life. It's hard coded in, so it's just born in him. So it's so lovely to hear you reference that. I think, and that's the glorious teamwork nature of comic book creation that you were just talking about, you're just referencing. I mean, there are great writer artists who do it all themselves, and that's very interesting in and of itself. But I'm very interested in the way you all come together and produce this thing that's this common piece of productivity.
It's a conversation. I think like books are a conversation only between the author and the reader.
Yeah.
But what's cool about comics is that it's a conversation that's happening on many dimensions, but before it ever reaches the reader, it's a conversation happening between me and David, between me and Enid, between Enid and David. And like, it's very cool when it works, it works.
I think this is why the fauna related backgrounds are so interesting, because of course, what it truly is organic, right? That's the thing about comic creation. It's absolutely an organic process. And something that I wanted to mention that you touched upon a lot, Enid, which I can completely agree with, particularly with reference to your work mutually, is the rhythm of it and the poetry of it. Yeah. And I can see, Enid, that's something you really feel. I really feel that on the page when I see your artwork. But I think those two things are a massive factor in your success, Victoria, in terms of your writing. It has such natural rhythm and grace to it. And while you're coming up with these great fantastical concepts, some people are much more antiseptic in their delivery of that than you are. And I think, was that something that was always in you? Was it something that you found you had to amplify as you went along?
Well, so my work, I started in poetry, and so I've always had like a fairly close relationship to semantic and to syllabolic rhythm and flow. And I think that when I'm writing a story, I try and think in terms of music. So I try and think like, what genre of music is this? Like, what's the rhythm going to be? Like, I have novels where, I'll use the absence of punctuation to create like flow and musicality, whereas in Vicious and Vengeful in the books, it's very staccato. Shorter sentences continually interrupt longer beats. Like there's a sense of the comic book perforation of the story where I want it to feel like panels. I want it to feel choppy. So you'll notice, even if you like look at a page of Vicious, that the rhythm of that book tends to emulate the comic book atmosphere. I want it to go very quickly. The chapters are very short, like it has that page turn momentum. And so, yeah, I think that thinking in terms of color palette and musicality, even when I'm writing novels, the color palette is something I think of all the time. And obviously in books, that just exists in my head and in the reader's head, but I still think about it. I still think, okay, it kind of goes back to me saying that I'm trying to create a movie that then the reader is going to see in their head. And just like that, I want to be able to dictate the soundtrack and the color palette and the style. And so it's about how do you make choices in the actual structure of writing, in the flow, in the word choices, in the sentences, in the scenes, in the chapters, that can create a movie, not just any movie, but a specific movie in the reader's head. And so I think that's something I'm always playing with in novel form. And one of the reasons that I love the visual medium so much is like, it takes a little bit of the weight off of me of that articulation, and it puts it into the artist's hands.
Yeah, that makes a great deal of sense. You talked about musicality, and I feel a great deal of musicality in your work, Enid. Having mentioned that, I'm interested in something which is, in my experience, the artists that I've worked with over the years fallen into two camps. They either listen to music when they work, or they don't. Which one are you, mate?
Well, I've been recently hearing to a new podcast named Hard Agree, from a very good friend. I love to hear podcasts. I'm a podcast guy. I do hear music, but I try to learn things. I try to know people. I mean, when I was very lost, I was looking to Victoria's stories on Instagram, and she wrote something that changed my life. So this is about doing work, and someone who is out there is gonna get hooked with your story, and perhaps it might even save their life. So I always try to branch with the people I'm working, and enjoy the part that they share with me, which I'm very thankful. I try to take these people, for example, you, Andrew, with your podcast, Victoria with her work and her social media work, which is amazing. She does so many things. I try to take it as an opportunity. You know, comics are very amazing, and they are very captivating, but I try to know the people that come to my life. I always try to think that it's not something circumstantial, but also like a gift. You know, you're going to know these people that are presented, and if you take the chance, okay, and if you don't, they pass through your life. No, but you guys are very amazing people, also producing different kinds of work and jobs and things that I'm also enjoying. So I'm very happy listening to your podcast. I've been working and trying to focus on those stories. Then I changed to Victoria's stories, which are also directing me to other things. I've been listening to magic podcasts and mysteries, and trying to fill my head with that, trying to like bathe from other people's ideas, and then consolidate it or try to impregnate the comic book with those ideas. Mate, what about you guys? What do you do when you work?
What do I do? I listen. So I because musicality and rhythm are super important in my writing. When I'm writing novels, I can't listen to anything with lyrics or like things, right. But I listen to classical music. I'll listen to, like, my favorite is to listen to like rain, like but I'll turn it up so loud that it is like complete white noise. Like it just fills my head with white noise. I feel like that creates almost a permission in my head to think loudly, to just like be undistracted by things. But when I'm working on scripts for films and TV and for comics, I can listen to music, and it's deeply exciting because I love music. I want music to fill every moment of my day. And so to get to listen to and discover new artists is really, really cool. And so I look forward to when I'm writing scripts, because it's the only time I can listen to music with lyrics.
Yeah, that is so interesting. As not a novelist, but a journalist, I find exactly the same thing. Generally, I can only listen to instrumental music. But what I like to do is theme the music, so that one of the things I do on the side is I edit crime fiction. So I'll always listen to kind of jazz and bebop while I'm doing that, because it just, it matches the emotional landscape. And it's very kind of you, by the way, mate. I wasn't fishing for you to mention my podcast then, but real quick on that podcast, this sounds like a terrible name drop, but a mate of mine, Dave Gibbons, is the artist on Watchmen. He was talking about this very subject quite at length, and he has all different kinds of music selections that he can make as an artist, with his view being that when you're illustrating, and he writes as well, but when you're illustrating, you can listen to any kind of lyrics. He made exactly that same point. When he writes a script, it just has to be instrumental only. And I think that's such an interesting thing. But
I will say that one of my musical choices is so indicative of the pandemic. I use an app called Forest, which allows you, it's essentially a Pomodoro method, but you grow trees. And if you abandon it, the tree dies. So it's very incentivized. I have always said the only thing that would incentivize me more is if the app was called Kitten, and you were growing cats, and if you abandoned your work, the cat would die. That's a bit too morbid, but they have some sound profiles in the app so you can listen to sound, and one of them is a Paris cafe.
Yeah.
And
wow.
Last year I missed, because I, up until the pandemic, never worked at home. I only, for me, I would go and I would find a cafe, I'd work for a couple of hours, leave, go to a different cafe, work for a couple of hours. And so I missed that environment so much, that's being a stranger in a crowd, having that white noise of other people's lives around me. And so I would turn on that Paris cafe sound, and I have to say, I didn't expect it to work. And I would look up 2 hours later, I would have been completely immersed in my work that whole time. It's very Pavlovian.
That is absolutely wonderful, and it desperately makes me want to try that myself, I have to say.
Oh, it's wonderful.
I can see it. That I would not perhaps recommend this, but I've got another friend of mine who's actually a firefighter, and his daily work is so completely chaotic quite often that he relaxes by listening to the sound that you hear on an airplane. Yeah.
Oh, that aerated sound
noise. Yeah. And he will sit at home and read a book listening to that, and I'm like, how can you even do this?
I have I have a fan in my room, but it's specifically it's called a Vornado, and it makes white noise as well as being a loud fan. So a lot of people, when they sleep, they like to have a white noise machine. And so this is a fan plus a white noise machine. And I will say that I have never slept better. There is something about that loud white noise. And maybe this is a bit existential, but I also listen to audiobooks when I'm trying to fall asleep. And it's because I heard somebody say recently that your brain can't talk if it has to listen. And so one of the ways to get your brain to stop spinning or stop chattering in your head when you're trying to wind down is to force it to listen to something, because it can't chatter when it's listening.
Okay.
And so I think having that kind of thing, whether it's an audiobook or white noise, when you're trying to decompress from your life, is actually kind of helpful on a subconscious level, because your brain can't be quite as loud.
You know what? I think we've walked through the door of ExtraOrdinary, and we're breaking new ground for a San Diego Comics panel, because there's about 2 or 3 things we've talked about in the last 5 minutes. I've been like, man, I have to try this. I have to do this. Although I have to say I'm a bit disappointed, because when you started telling that anecdote, I thought that what you meant is that you literally had a fan chained in your room, kind of clapping, going, could I just say, your latest novel was amazing, Victoria. Brilliant, fantastic work. And I thought, that's the secretly dark Victoria Schwab.
Misery
during these conversations. Exactly right. In reverse. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, phenomenal. That would be absolutely brilliant. There is a specific piece of comics business I wanted to ask you about, Enid. And it's specifically about the visions that Charlotte has in reflected surfaces. Did you find that a challenge to conceptualize and illustrate?
Well, actually, I started my career as a visual artist. So I had the experience to work in installation work and room exhibitions. So I have worked with objects, and I remembered that in the past I had collaborated with other artists, which a female co-worker who was working with mirrors as an object, as an artistic object, a sculptoric. I don't know how to say it, as a sculpture,
Yes.
but using mirrors. But there are a lot of artists in a new ground on contemporary arts who work with mirrors as very powerful objects and conceptualize them and try to work on narratives to them. So I had an experience with mirrors. And now, as we are talking, I get the sense that pandemic, as the God I was talking about at the first of the conversation, it has proposed to us a rebirth. I mean, we're paying attention to things in the house and the pets and trying to I mean, feeling things that we were never paying attention, perhaps, of the world happening. And then at least for me, for the first time, I'm like looking to things that I wasn't. So the other day I was going up the stairs to my room, and I saw that some of the mirrors in my house, in my apartment, are like touching the sides of them. So if you look to one mirror, you're looking to seven. Yeah. I was like, oh man, this is very crazy because I'm drawing about this, and then I'm looking at it. No, some things that I haven't paid attention. So it is like a discovery. I have the luck of discover Victoria's series through these comic books in a time that it is very unique, like very strange, very unique. I don't know, you guys, if you have had a different kind of realization, but it has come to me at a very strange and beautiful time, you know. I don't know if this will happen in another time of my life, but this book has come in a way that has changed me, and I have rather than suffer, on the contrary, I have enjoyed the mysteries of this book. It is extraordinary for me. It is.
Yeah, that's beautifully said, mate. Beautifully said. On that note, we're racing towards the end of this panel, so I would like to jump into the text of the series and ask you a question that the three of us have talked about before, but not for this audience, which is, if you were an EO, what would your special ability be? What would you want that ability to be?
For me, I've always wanted a time-based ability because I never feel like I have enough of it, but I also recognize that through the history of genre, time-based abilities usually go horribly wrong because people try to go back and change the past.
Yeah.
So I want a time-based ability, but that only works in the present and the future. So I want to be able to slow down, speed up, or stop, because I don't think you can mess up the timeline in that way, because it's just your relativity to movement around you. But I, as somebody who feels like we'll never have enough time to do the things that I want to do, I think that would be like deeply, I would give a lot for that ability.
That's very interesting. When you say slow down, speed up, stop. So would you be essentially in a place where you could stop the world around you and then do whatever you wish because it was frozen?
Like everything would stop. So basically, my relationship to time would stretch out to the point where I'm moving at a 1-to-1, right? And everyone else is moving at a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. Yeah. So they would essentially be paused.
Yes. Yeah. I used to, for many years, hope to do that myself. And I've realized as I've got older that it was good that I didn't, because I'm such a terrible procrastinator. I feel I would probably be stuck 30 years in my own past, just constantly delaying the inevitable. And so I never would have got to actually do anything. Yeah, exactly. Just trying to create more time for myself. That's so interesting though. How about yourself, Enid?
Well, as we talked the last time, I would really stick to becoming a tree. They have this powerful thing that even if you cut a branch or make, when I make bonsai, I'm always working with the root system, and then you can see leaves, you can see branches, and when a season passes, they regrow. I mean, they are super strong. I would aim to that. I mean, it's a beautiful strength because it doesn't push anything down. I mean, they don't distract, they have this kind of silent and a different timing intelligence, where they overcome their problems, and they they just grow. They just give food. They're super smart. I'm obsessed right now with trying to root fig tree cuttings, because I can't do it, and I'm trying and trying. I'm trying to understand what am I doing wrong, because if you put a fig tree cutting there, it will grow naturally. But if you try to do it artificially, it doesn't work always the way you want. So they have like this strange and mysterious intelligence, what I think I would rather try to understand that, because, you know, plants have been millions and millions of years before other types of creatures. And so this planet is actually fungi and plants, and it's so interesting. I mean, I will become like a biologist, comic artist biologist.
Yeah, I think that is a hybrid profession that the world is crying out for, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%.
You're absolutely the person to do it. Well, guys, that has been San Diego Comic-Con 2021, the Extraordinary Comics panel with Victoria V.E. Schwab and artist Enid Balám, talking about this great new comic series from Titan Comics. And the book is issues 1 and 2 are already out. You'll find them at all good comic stores. And the collected edition will be out later in the year, probably around October. Many thanks to everybody for joining us here at San Diego Comic-Con 2021.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have a surprise that I asked David.
Oh, right,
I was to show the original artwork for cover number 0.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Oh, it's stunning.
That is lovely. Oh, look at that, mate.
Wow. Incredible. A little behind the scenes process action to see how it becomes real.
Mate, it's so beautiful up close. The line work on it's so fantastic.
Yeah, the skeleton is my favorite.
Yeah. Look at that.
Oh wow.
Me too. Look at that. It's the dissonance between the skeleton and the eyes. Just so wonderful.
Incredible. Enid, you're an absolute gift to this series.
Well, I wanted to share it with you guys, so I asked for permission. And
yeah. Good old corporate. They've delivered again. That is phenomenal work, mate. And there you go, people of virtual San Diego Comic-Con 2021. We've ended on a real treat for you. And let's face it, when you're getting the chance to speak with Victoria Schwab and Enid Balám, life is always a treat. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the funny paper soon. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye. If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.